I know Apple's on your radar. Are you feeling optimistic for the most part?
Yeah. Hi, Nicole. Across all three that we'll be talking about, Apple, Google, and Facebook, it's not just how good I feel and how good the analysts feel, it's how much they should exceed expectations and beat year over year.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, just the little things like Apple and the channel checks that have been done by a name like Wedbush, for example, they really are seeing a lot of optimism and that excitement about the iPhone 12. They're doing channel checks abroad. And, you know, the question was whether or not the iPhone 12 would really have that stickiness and everything from EVs. What are your thoughts on Apple at this point?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the devices themselves, the quality of the product, it was as advertised and as desired. I think CNET said it was, the 12 in particular, the iPhone 12, was one of the best cell phones they've ever reviewed, ever. So again, expectations have been, I believe, met by the quality of the product. You've got the carriers and 5G doing their job in trying to entice people to upgrade that experience. And keep in mind, from a hardware standpoint, from a software standpoint, obviously you and I see technologies come out to help individuals and light business professionals thrive at home. But from a hardware standpoint, there really isn't another 800-pound gorilla from, again, a lower consumer, light business professional standpoint that can offer, frankly, baseline good technology to help us live in the 21st century post-COVID. Apple's still there. So from a quality of the manufacturing standpoint, the device, and the acceleration of 5G and the adoption of it, which will just continue into next year, like everything's coming up, I think, in their favor.
Well, that's a good sign. So that likely is to be a beat or a meet. As you said, the expectations were high, but you feel that they've met those. The question is whether or not they can do so with the stock and the numbers that come through. That being said, what about a name like Facebook?
So you've got both they and Apple coming out later on today. And then, of course, you've got Google, I think, February 2nd. So yet again, not just with Apple, but with Facebook and Google, the expectations are borderline crazy. You've got on Apple's end, the expectation was year over year, at least 12.5% increase top line. Facebook, the consensus is 25% year over year, going from about $20.5 billion to $26 billion top line revenue. And I believe the expectation was about a 10% increase in daily active users. So these expectations, look, they're going to shatter last year from a year over year and a quarter over quarter standpoint. But these expectations are really aggressive. But again, what we're seeing from our agency's standpoint, what I'm seeing in the real dollars being spent, you've got the cost per click and the cost per milli. Basically, the mechanisms by which they can make a profit or not make a profit, both of those are significantly up. And don't forget, they got a lot of free money from that giant November election. They probably scraped $600 to $800 million from that, just Facebook. So they're looking for, the street's looking for north of $26.5 billion top line. I think they're going to beat that. And I think they're also going to beat the percent increase in daily active users, which frankly, it's ridiculous, but I think they can do it.
Well, those are some good reviews. Before I get to Google, you know, the quick thought is that sometimes they beat and the stocks sell off anyway.
Yes.
Would you be buyer of Apple, Facebook, and or Google?
As you and I have talked before, I'm long and will be long in both Apple and Google, and we'll get to Google in a second. Facebook is, as long as you and I have connected, agnostic of how well that company does from primary KPIs, financial. They could knock it out of the park, and they have knocked it out of the park in the past. And that doesn't mean that Wall Street will reward them. It's that continual, I believe, existential threat, primarily from the government, that Facebook faces. So to answer your question directly, I am hesitant, as I will always be, to go long on Facebook, because the market realities and how they treat them from a, on a per share basis often has no relevance to how well Facebook did. So you're very correct.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about Google at this point now.
So let's end with Google. Google continues to dominate the lower part of the consumer sales funnel. They're new, and it's hard to think after 20 plus years of Google being around that they still roll out new products for advertising channels and platforms and agencies like ours to spend our clients' money on. But yet in the past 12 to 18 months, they have rolled out some new features that advertisers can take advantage of. And I just connected with my team this morning. Each one of those new features that Google rolls out, one's called Discovery Ads in particular, it has been incredibly profitable for our clients, which means in Q4 and in 2021, we're going to dump as much money as possible because Google and Facebook makes our clients quite a bit of money. So I've got nothing but upside for Google, Facebook, and Apple into the new year. But Google and Apple, I'll stay long on. Facebook, to your earlier point, that's pretty close to gambling because regardless of how well they do, they sometimes take a hit.
Yeah. Is there anything else when you think about the broader market and where we'll be in 1 month, 6 months, a year from now? What's the outlook for you in your mind?
Sure. In terms of what COVID has accelerated, the personal preferences for shopping, for consuming, for self-educating, for communicating, I don't think those trends are going to go away. So the channels, platforms, and in Apple's case, the hardware, and then in Zoom's case, the software that allows us to thrive during COVID, I don't think it's going to go away. I do think some other e-commerce sectors like fashion actually took a hit. So the majority of e-commerce thrived for obvious reasons in Q4. It's one of the main drivers of Facebook and Google's good performance. Fashion took a hit, obviously travel, leisure, those things. I think those will obviously come back. So the sectors that were already strong through COVID and the channels that took advantage of them will continue to thrive. And it's only going to get better when we can return to some semblance of a normal. And those channels those sectors will come back, I think.